Hello, Serena. How's it going?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you doing, Sarah?
I am excellent. I think this was the fastest 8 weeks ever. I can't believe we are already approaching race weekend. I'm so excited. How about you?
I'm super excited too. I totally agree. The summer flew by, which always happens, but it still always shocks me. And yeah, I'm really excited because I'm going to be in Vancouver, Washington this weekend. So I'm hoping to run there. So I'm excited about that.
That'll be so nice. Well, great. So we definitely want to talk about carb loading. Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? When should we do it? How should we do it? But before we get to that, I think it would be a really great time to discuss the race very quickly. Because I know that you have had quite the training cycle these past 8 weeks. I've had quite the training cycle these past 8 weeks. Everyone has. And so I just want to take a minute for the entire audience to say, no matter where you're at right now, do not feel pressure, feel excited. Trust your training up until this moment. If you ran once in the past 8 weeks, that's okay. If you ran every single day and you're feeling great and you're ready to attack it, that's great as well. But you have to remember that wherever you're at right now, it's perfectly fine. One, this is a time trial or a virtual race, whatever you want to call it. The crowd will be whatever you decide it to be. So there's no pressure. Whatever you want to do, however you want to run your race, it's all yours. You get to make your crowd, you get to make your course, you get to do whatever you want. So make sure you take the pressure off. But two, if you haven't been running as often, or you've been battling an injury, or you've just been battling life, don't worry about it. This is such a great time for you to develop that base, for you to see where you're at so that you can decide, okay, now I know, 20, 30, 40 minute, 5K, 10K, whatever that is for you. Now you can set realistic goals going forward. So if you're in the camp that maybe you're feeling a little undertrained, or you're coming back from an injury, still get after it, guys. Don't go all out and really push yourself, but make sure that you go out there and you have fun and you honor your body and your journey. I personally haven't been doing much speed training this past cycle. I'm still going to go out. I'm going to run that 5K, and I'm really curious to see what time I get, because I've been building miles. I haven't been building speed, so we'll see where we're at.
I love that. And, that's something I always talk about with my one-on-one clients is I'm always like, get curious about why something happened, right? Because if you go into this weekend and let's say you haven't been running as much, or like, let's say your race doesn't go the way you planned and you just feel like intense shame or guilt or anxiety about it, you're not going to learn a lesson, right? It's hard to learn a lesson when your brain is freaking out and having a temper tantrum, right? Think of it like a child. You can't teach them anything when they're mid-temper tantrum, right? But if instead we can reflect and say, hey, why did this happen? You probably can learn a really shiny lesson from it that will carry you forward, because being an athlete isn't just like, an 8-week stint, right? This is a lifelong commitment we have to our body. So when you're an athlete, if you're like, hey, Serena and Sarah, I didn't eat the way I was, in a way that made me feel good in my body, we can say, hey, why did that happen? And then we can learn from a lesson and take an action to make you feel better. Or, hey, I didn't train and follow my training plan, and I wanted to. That's important, right? And I wanted to. Oh, well, why did that happen? Maybe you were trying to run after work and that's not viable for you, or you were trying to squeeze it in instead of scheduling the workouts, right? So if you just say, I suck, I didn't do something, you're not going to learn the valuable lesson that it's like sitting there waiting for you to learn it. But if you can be reflective and non-judgmental and say, why didn't this happen? Or why did this happen? And just get curious, then there's a big fat lesson there waiting for you that you can learn from and you can take forward for the next training cycle.
Exactly. Always come from a place of curiosity. I love hearing that. But okay, so great. Let's chat about the race. Let's chat about carb loading. Guys, as you know, we are here to inform you, to talk about all the myths and all the facts. If you have questions at any point, drop them in the chat and we'll address them as well. But Serena, can you just give us the first basis as to what is this carb loading we always hear about? Is it important? What does it do?
Mm-hmm. So when we hear carb loading, I think we kind of get this like sensationalized idea of what it is, which is like eating lots of pasta and eating lots of candy and eating lots of, sugary, carb-rich foods, and just kind of focusing on those foods and going hard, especially like the night before, is kind of what I think about in preparation for a race. And the thought is that eating all these extra carbohydrates are going to help improve your performance, because as runners, we know that carbs are the basis of our fuel and help us with our activity. So I think that's kind of like the common perception of what carb loading is. So there's actually, like, as a sports dietitian, how I see it and what the literature kind of lines out for us is this is a kind of advanced practice that I use in my virtual private practice with my marathoners and my half marathoners, is this true like carb loading training, but we can do kind of like a mini version for our races that are more in this 5K to 10K range. So what the science shows, like what official carb loading is basically having a 48-hour window before our race where we are going to eat less fat and less protein and really focus on low fiber, high carbohydrate rich foods. And what this does is it saturates our muscle cells with extra glycogen, which is like stored sugar, so extra sugar, so that when you are out there pushing your pace, you have extra carbohydrate to tap into to fuel your effort.
Got it. Awesome. And so the question has come up a lot in terms of, should I be carb loading before a long run? And I'd love to address that, but maybe we could start with the race in mind first, and then we could talk about the differences between carb loading for a 5K or a 10K race, and then carb loading for a 10 plus mile run, because some of the athletes in this group are running over 10 miles on the weekends. But so when would you recommend someone to start their carb loading? Is it the night before, 2 nights before, the week of? What are your thoughts?
So I think so we're talking about for the race, right? The 5-10K?
Yeah, let's start with the race.
So for the 5-10K guys, we don't have to do too much carb loading, but instead what I would just say is the night before, and this kind of applies to all carb loading strategies. Don't eat, I'm assuming you're racing in the morning. Okay, so I'm gonna make that assumption. You're going to eat an earlier dinner, and this is because we don't wanna go to bed with a really full belly and then wake up and still feel kind of full, right? We wanna wake up feeling like light. Our stomach is, has digested the food. We don't wanna wake up full. So eat an earlier dinner. Avoid fiber. Okay, so I wouldn't have beans. I wouldn't have like broccoli or gassy vegetables. And make it a pretty low fiber meal. And the same thing, you want to have less fat. Okay, so less avocado, less olive oil, less cream, less butter, less protein. Okay, so this is like a freakazoid meal is what I jokingly call it. It's a little weird. It's not balanced. So less chicken, less ricotta cheese, less seitan or tofu, and more easy to digest carbohydrates. White rice, pasta, a sandwich with some thick bread. So really kind of emphasizing that carb at that dinner the night before should be enough carbohydrate to kind of saturate a little extra sugar in your muscles, but you don't need to be like preparing for it the way we would do for like at the half marathon plus distance.
Definitely. Totally agree there. Oh man, I had a question that escaped me, but yes, I totally agree. It's so funny throughout our entire series together. I feel like we're like, the pre-run workout, the pre-run snack is kind of freaky. The pre-race meal is kind of freaky. And it's like, yeah, there's all these like conflicting things that we say, but like runners are kind of weird too, guys. So just kind of go with it and know that like whatever feels right, you're either going to love or you're going to learn from. So too, like a lot of the things that Serena and I talk about, it may seem super overwhelming. And you have to know, like, Serena's been doing this her whole life. She comes from a nutrition background. She works in the field. So when she's talking about this stuff, it's like second nature to her. When I'm talking about running and splits and fartleks and mile paces and all of the different, lingo, it's second nature to me. It might be overwhelming to you. So just remember, take the bites that resonate with you, maybe take some notes as you're going. And that way you can always go back to it, because it may seem overwhelming at first, and you're always welcome to reach out to us with questions as you go. But definitely don't hear us and say, okay, that's too much. I'm just not even going to go there.
Absolutely. I think if you can even take one thing away from this, right? Like, don't have beans for dinner the night before, right? Like, that's useful. And then like what Sarah, I think that was really eloquent what Sarah just said, like, this is our area of expertise, right? Like, if you started like talking accounting or politics to me, I would be like, I would take one valuable nugget and that's it. But that's why, I hire an accountant to do my taxes. So if you're somebody who really is feeling like die hard about mastering your fueling or mastering your running plans, right? Like, that's why you hire experts to help you. And we have that virtual option for you guys. But I think in terms, and also, yes, DMing us and asking us and picking our brain is excellent idea too. But I think in terms of like what you guys need to know to not overwhelm you is, night before, I recommend having something that doesn't make your belly gassy or make you have to poop, right? So avoiding fiber, nothing too heavy or fried, no fried food, nothing with lots of cream or oil. So just kind of like simple, easy to digest carbohydrate like rice or bread or pasta. And the other thing that this isn't really carb loading, but it's good like race day practice is eating an earlier meal so you're digested when you wake up. Also, I would recommend not eating any food the like 72 hours before your race that you've never eaten before, right? Like, the night before a race isn't the greatest time to try curry for the first time or, have a new brand of something you've never tried. Like, we really want to stick to our tried and true foods we've been eating throughout through the 8 weeks so that we know how our belly and our body reacts to those foods when you do have an effort, a race going on. This is like a little race day superstition of mine. I wonder, and I'd be curious if Sarah has one too. I always have a cup of, it's either like hot water or hot tea before I go to bed. This makes our GI system push food downwards to help us like poop so that you don't poop your pants when you're running. So that's like my little like race day superstition. The night before I'll have a cup of hot water. My boyfriend knows. So just kind of like knowing that you should be eating an early dinner and you should be avoiding any brand new foods. And then whatever you've been practicing for your pre-run meal during the 8-week cycle is what you would want to do before your race day.
100%. That's funny you do it the night before. I do it the morning of. For those of you that have run races before, you may know a thing or two about the pre-run poop. For those of you that don't, if you can use the bathroom before your race, I highly recommend it. But I think one more thing that I wanted to circle back to is a lot of times we'll say like, don't have foods that are high in fiber. Maybe we could talk about what high in fiber qualifies as on the nutrition label. But then in addition to that, I wanted to say to you guys, if say something doesn't have a nutrition label like broccoli, just when in doubt, Google it. Is broccoli high in fiber? If it's not something that you're sure of or a food that you regularly eat, Google can't hurt. It can hurt in a lot of instances, but if it's just a simple, is X high in calcium, fiber, potassium, whatever it is that you're looking for, I'd say that's fine.
Yeah. So that's awesome advice, because Sarah's saying don't get obsessive, which I think is, worthwhile mentioning. So, the thing is everyone's like tolerance for fiber is different. So somebody who eats a high fiber diet maybe could eat something with 5 grams of fiber on that nutrition facts label and be totally fine. Versus if it's somebody who doesn't eat a whole lot of fiber in their diet and they ate something with 5 grams of fiber and went out there, they might really feel it. So it is a little variable. I usually say if something has 5 grams of fiber per 1 serving, that's like a pretty aggressive amount of fiber. So, when you're in that 3-4 range, I would say that's a good amount of fiber. If it's less than 3, you're probably going to be fine. And then just kind of knowing gas, like guys, your body. If you're like, every time I eat that, I get gassy or I have to poop, like don't eat that the night before the race. Like avoid that for like 48, 72 hours before the race day, right? Like things like flax seeds, chia seeds, those will kind of cause GI distress. Gassy vegetables like cruciferous vegetables like bok choy or Brussels sprouts or broccoli or cauliflower, maybe not the best idea to have a whole lot of those in that 48-hour window before your race. Like bran cereal, like something like all bran or raisin bran, like that's going to kind of cause some issues. So these foods are really healthy for us. It's just we're being super careful about GI distress, because when you're racing, in theory, you don't have to do this, but in theory, you're pushing yourself really hard, which means our body is less able to regulate our like anal sphincter. So you're more apt to poop your pants. So this is just poop your pants prevention talk. So you don't have to do any of this. So you're like, I like broccoli, I'm not going out there tomorrow and running like a crazy person. That's fine. I don't care. But just some race day etiquette strategies.
For all my new runners in the group, if you're hearing Serena and I talk about poop our pants freely, just, give it a couple more races and you'll be right there with us. Like, the longer you run, like I said, we are a bit of a weird breed. Like, we'll talk about anything, man.
What to talk about? Like, it is all of us. Like, no one is ever. You're not going to be a runner and never have that problem. And when you have a problem, it's a big problem. So you're going to want to talk about it.
Yeah. And I'd rather us help you figure out how to do it the night before, the morning of, than trying to figure out where you go in the middle of a race when you've just really made a big mistake.
We all have the stories. They're gross.
But okay, so we have mastered the pre-race dinner. If you guys have any questions about specific things, feel free to drop them in the chat. But maybe we can move on a little bit to that pre-race breakfast or snack. Again, like huge disclaimer, guys, every stomach is very different. And I would say I would liken whatever you've been eating before your long runs or your tempo and speed workouts, whatever you eat before that, try that race day. Don't try anything new. But what are some like key ingredients that we're like, this will definitely give me some energy. It is going to keep me from pooping my pants. What do you got?
Yeah. So again, at this point in the cycle, you should have already practiced this, right? But if you're, like we were saying, if you're kind of taking this as just like a practice race, then awesome time to try it out. So again, we want foods that are mostly easy to digest carbohydrate and low in fiber. So doing something like some crackers with a little bit of peanut butter. You don't need a whole lot of peanut butter, just a little bit is a good idea. A banana is a good idea. Banana is a little bit of a weird fruit because it has this very special type of fiber that doesn't make you poop your pants. It's a whole other story for a different day. But bananas are safe to eat. Most other fruits may be a little GI distressing. Having something like some toast with like a little bit of honey on it would be a good idea. Having oatmeal, I think, is pretty variable. Some people love oatmeal before their run. Some people think it's too high fiber. Again, it depends on your personal threshold. I have Run Runner. She just shaved 7 minutes off her half marathon. She uses cereal, dry cereal, as her pre-workout. I'm really proud of her. She told me that yesterday, like nonchalantly, and I was like, what? Like, I didn't get a text about this. Are you kidding? So just some dry cereal or some cereal with some lower fat milk. Again, just because the fat could cause GI distress. There's nothing wrong with whole milk or like almond milk or cashew milk or something like that. So really just like simple, easy to digest carbohydrates, foods you're comfortable with. Don't, eat oatmeal for the first time ever tomorrow morning, right? Like something you've run with in your stomach before, preferably, but something you're familiar with and is easy to digest. And ideally, we're eating our pre-workout meal an hour before our run. I think it's worthwhile saying, if you're somebody who's really like get up and go, then you don't have that time for that digestion and you need something really easy to digest. So that would be a time you would grab like a gel, or you would have maybe like a third of a cup of like dried fruit, like raisins or mango or something, or maybe some juice, and kind of leaning on that really like jolt of sugar to the bloodstream type deal.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So let's transition from 5K, 10K races in this last 5 or so minutes that we have together to long runs of 10 plus miles. How does that differ between the 5K, the 10K, and then the endurance training run?
Are you talking about like a carb loading technique? Okay.
Yep.
This is exciting. So I do this with my one-on-one athletes is we literally before long runs practice our race day strategy so that when you're on that starting line, you feel confident. You already know like how your body's going to feel and you've done this before. So carb loading is a very cool science. So some things you may or may not care about that I'm just going to tell you anyway is carb loading is not as well proven in women as it is for men. The studies are mostly on males. That said, I think that's because studies in general usually aren't done on women because we all have different cycles. So where we are in our cycle is going to impact how well our body can utilize carbohydrate, right? So I'm just like kind of giving this caveat that this science is really well documented for males. It's not as well documented for women. And depending on where you are in your cycle, that also is going to impact like how well this carb loading strategy works for you. So when we're on our period, we're most like a man, and therefore the carb loading would work really well if you're running on your period, which was so weird to me when I learned that. Okay, so carb loading, what we do is 72 hours before. This part is inconclusive. Whether you do this or not is kind of up to you. But my athletes, we usually go low carb for 1 day, 72 hours before. What this does is it takes out all the glycogen, that's the stored sugar, from our muscle cells. And now our muscles are like really ready for some carbohydrate when you get into the high carb phase, the 48 hours before your race. Okay, so 3 days before your race, you eat very low carb, and then 48 hours before our race, we eat a lot of carbs, minimize protein, minimize fat, low fiber carbohydrates, snacking all day on that, and then same thing that night before, the same thing you and I just talked about, having an early dinner, mostly simple to digest carbohydrate, and I'm not trying any new food, so everything else kind of applies.
Yep, that's great. That's great. And I think what's so exciting about this, guys, is there, like, as you all know, there are no races going on right now. So you have nothing to lose by trying this out. Give it a shot. If you go out for your long run on a Saturday and you just don't feel great, that's fine. Call it early, go on your long run on a Sunday, or, push it to the next weekend. Like, now is the time where we get to play and try things and see what works. And, maybe it might mess with your virtual training for races a little bit, but now is the time to play around, because missing, a long run or having to cut that long run short 1 week is not going to deter your training, too much. It's now is the time to play is all I want to say. But okay, so let's wrap this up with what we have going on right now. I can see the viewer count. I cannot see who you are. So here's what we're going to do, guys. If you are watching this right now, I want you to screenshot this and share it on your social media. Tell me one thing that you learned today. It should be very easy because we have given you a lot. If you can't think of something, scroll back, tag both of us in it. And if you do that, I will send you a free Mindful Miles t-shirt. I'm wearing it right now. And that's all. That is it. That is my thank you to you, is your reward for tuning in, for being your best self. But please let us know. Let us know what you learned today. Let us know what you are excited for this weekend. And I cannot wait to see how everybody did by tracking you through Strava this weekend.
Yay! Yeah, guys, that's a really nice offer. The shirt is really nice. I have it. It's super comfy. It's really high quality. It's it's cool. It's not like ugly. It's cool. I was really impressed when I got it in the mail. I was like, this is really nice. I like wear it just around like real life. And yeah, I'm excited to see everyone race on Strava as well. It's going to be an exciting weekend.
Yes. Well, this was such a great training cycle with you, Serena. By now, you should all know where to find Serena. She is our humble and wonderful team nutritionist. At any point, if you guys need her guidance, I'm sure she'd be happy to hear from you. If not, reach out to me, and I'm happy to connect you to.
Absolutely. Yeah. You guys can follow me on Instagram at Serena Marie RD if you're not already. And absolutely either ask Sarah or just reach out to me, and I'm happy to help you with anything you need.
Perfect. All righty. Good luck this weekend.
Good luck. Bye.